Hey everybody, welcome to 2ZQ Hot Takes, where we discuss issues both big and small. I am your host, the very handsome Tim Kirk, and this time I'll be talking about RTO. And this is one of the things that has been a bone of contention with people in all walks of all professions, is the return to office mandates that have been imposed. Now, to me, same people who complained about being forced to go into an office and want to be remote and fulfilled and satisfied and happier than they have ever been in their lives, and how much they hate being forced to return to the office and what an imposition, and I can't spend any time with my kids, my pets. I don't like wearing shoes. The time and money spent on commuting and eating out and obligatory drinks with coworkers and being forced to sit through endless meetings and blah, 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 are now complaining that they don't get to interact with people. And they got what they wanted, but it's not what they expected. And you joined an organization where there seems to be almost no difference between Malcolm McDowell's character Alex and A Clockwork Orange, where you are relentlessly pelted with corpo speak, happy talk, owning your career, the sky is the limit, and whatever recycled, fourth-rate psychobabble is being spewed to a new generation of condescending young people. And then that gets spread around like Vegemite and everyone's force-fed toast, all while incessantly smiling and using every term of current business jargon so as not to appear to be out of sync with the youngest, most useless and mysteriously deduced as having some sort of high technical aptitude in an area of business centered on tech, and they're seen as a prodigy. So you don't want to upset them, but they don't know basic facts of life or how to make small talk, or just stop complaining about every tactile sensation they don't find completely soothing and keep their opinions to themselves as if nobody ever went through any of this in a different generational context. But now getting a job is akin to signing up to donating bone marrow instead of going to an office, doing a day's work, and going home when you were done. And now you are on call 24/7 and have to be up as a pup for whatever the next higher in command insists is a priority, and you have to buy into it, hook, line, and sinker. So now it turns out from an article on LinkedIn that water cooler chit chat is pretty important because remote workers are feeling lonely. Many American workers now say they're profoundly lonely after the workplace shifts of the past 4 years. In one 2023 poll, more than 40% of remote working parents said they went days without leaving the house. Even frequent meetings don't help. Another survey found that very lonely people generally attended more meetings than their less lonely colleagues. Virtual meetings only compound that problem. Workers' loneliness is hurting businesses too, with both staff turnover and employee absences on the rise at a cost of about $154 billion a year. People from different parts of corporate life have said things from Americans have forgotten how to live in community. Volunteer, start a hobby, talk to your neighbors face to face. It's not your employer's responsibility to meet your social, emotional needs. Research has shown that the most popular kids in school are the ones who proactively reach out to others to ask how they're doing. Become externally focused and you'll never feel lonely again. This was in response to a Wall Street Journal post. Other people said, sure, we're lonely, but it has little to do with where we work. Inflation means people don't have as much money to eat out, see concerts, or travel as much anymore. They can't afford to live close to work, so they spend lonely hours commuting by themselves. They're constantly stressed out about money, which doesn't exactly want to make people go out and socialize. Fix the economic problems and the loneliness will go away. I think that's a little bit on the oversimplification side of things. But these are just people's basically opinions, Someone said, exactly, it's about intentionality. The issue is so many people were thrust into work from home as a necessity. And while people often love the flexibility, work from home was easy during COVID when everyone was doing it and there was nowhere to go and no one to see. except for all the frontline service workers, of course. Those of us like myself who have worked remotely for almost 20 years ensure there's breaks, time outside, and lunch, just as you do at work, when it suits you, and for me, doing the mom thing so I can see my kids and other friends, etc. It's about finding a system that will work for you and allow you to stay connected. It's not easy, but nothing worth it ever is. Okay. Somebody also said, more Americans are profoundly lonely, and for many, the workplace, long a wellspring of connection, is deepening that sense of isolation. I learned so much in speaking with social scientists to report this piece, from the most impactful number of times a month to come into the office to maximize social connection. Hint, it might not be as often as you think. The importance of sometimes stultifying small talk, and what percent of Americans say they don't leave the house for days while working remotely? It's less than 40. Still, if you're spitballing somewhere around 40%, that's a very high percentage of people who have not left home for the sake of work. Now, from Fast Company, there's an article from the Impact Council, and this is in late May, why you should rethink return to office mandates. This March, 4 years after many businesses began to operate remotely in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Dell announced to its workforce that any employee who wants a promotion must start working in person. This message followed announcements from IBM in January that managers should begin reporting in person or plan to leave their roles. Managers and companies across sectors have been continuously reducing remote work as public health restrictions faded over the past few years, reflecting a desire to return to the traditional in-person work models. The question of where companies do their work requires considering a variety of factors: the sector they operate in, client expectations, corporate culture, and the physical distribution of their workforces. There is no one-size-fits-all answer, and for some organizations, an in-person environment is best. But there are compelling reasons to believe that in many cases, especially in information-based industries like software, fully remote work is preferable to stay productive, competitive, and attractive to talent. The productivity debate. Before the pandemic, I counted myself amongst those who placed the utmost value on having a fully in-person workforce. But as a CEO with 3 decades of experience managing tech workforces, I know that the only constant is change, and I accept new information when it presents itself. These past 4 years, I've watched my teams thrive while working remotely and have come to see continued remote work as the best path forward for my company. One of the most commonly cited reasons to enforce a return to the office is productivity. Some managers believe that workers can't match the office environment efficiency at home. The evidence behind this assertion is decidedly mixed. Some studies of remote work's productivity impact show small declines, while others show modest to significant gains. A recent study from the Federal Reserve Bank in San Francisco found no discernible impact on productivity either way from remote work. It's understandable that productivity should vary across industries. Healthcare may not be as productive virtually as it is in person, even if telehealth services often make sense for cost or convenience. In software, on the other hand, coding can happen anywhere and is best in a comfortable environment with limited distractions, like a home office, while adopting best practices to maintain engineering groups' team structures. That's his opinion. How to maintain productivity with remote staff. It's essential to understand the best ways to ensure high productivity levels, like creating team structures for motivation and accountability, and apply them to a virtual workplace. At my company, Blackbaud, we have taken steps to replicate the team sport mentality by creating scrum teams that work together closely using collaborative software to coordinate projects. We also institute bi-weekly stand-up meetings for these scrum teams to celebrate progress or milestones, creating a regular opportunity to measure achievement and assess where productivity needs improvement. In customer support, we redesigned our onboarding process into a buddy system, After a traditional training period, new team members spend time with the more experienced employee listening to support calls and receiving individual feedback. Well, I have to say the idea of being flexible and adapting to change is the most critical thing anyone can do in any area of business at all times. This isn't just a new thing. This is something that needs to be understood by everyone. The only constant is change, and you must ride the crest of the wave of change at all times, as far as I know. These best practices have allowed us to improve measurable productivity in several metrics, including a 20% increase in the consistency of delivering new capabilities, improved sales agent efficiency, and improved customer and employee satisfaction. Listen to what workers want. Productivity aside, one compelling reason to maintain or introduce a remote-first model is to boost a company's competitiveness in the talent race. In the 4 years since the pandemic began, the availability of remote work as an option has become not just a coveted benefit for employees, but often an expectation. Employee surveys show clear risks of mandatory return to office policies. A McKinsey study showed that 10% of workers would quit their jobs if required to work in person full time. These same employees would also trade more than 20% of their compensation to work remotely. Really? The picture becomes even more clear when observing some of the most essential categories of talent. A Conference Board survey found a clear relationship between a preference for remote work and age. The youngest workers are the most positive about remote options. As companies compete for new talent, it is essential to stay attractive to those employees who have come up in a remote environment. Standing out as a remote-first company in a varied environment has proved highly valuable. Blackbaud's applications have risen by 50% since we first went remote. Wow. That's his own testimony. Of course, there are certain ways in which organizations need to adapt in order to make remote work work. Training in a remote environment is different than training in person. We found that lengthening the onboarding process from 2 days to 3 months, believe me, onboarding is something that is so wildly differently interpreted by everybody and every corporation. It's insane. And some people just let people show up at an office and feel for themselves and sink or swim. And there have been studies and there are LinkedIn courses that can tell you that people who are onboarding experts find that the most common reason why people leave their organization, if they are told and are assured that none of what they say in their exit interviews is going to impact their future job, is the poor onboarding experience. So there is a tremendous amount of conflicting opinion about what onboarding constitutes, whether it's just you're given an ID badge and HR walks you through a manual and tells you about certain things, or the actual hands-on experience of learning how to do your job as it fits within the context of the company and having feedback so that you're able to do this on your own within a relatively short period of time and then make a positive contribution, are very, very different and are interpreted vastly differently by different organizations. So again, we found that lengthening the onboarding process from 2 days to 3 months has helped us maintain quality and ensure new hires are up to speed, even as they are expected to learn more independently. We've also created group cohorts and have occasional regional gatherings for employees to spend some time together in person. Managers also need to be trained in how to keep employees engaged using different tools, strategies, and approaches that cater specifically to a remote environment. In a world-class company, culture also requires purposeful attention when teams aren't interacting in person every day. While the team model is helpful in building relationships and connectivity among those who work together most closely, companies should also create opportunities for broader swaths of their workforce to interact occasionally. Volunteer opportunities, learning sessions, leadership town halls, and company offsites are all good touch points that companies can establish to ensure that culture thrives even with distributed work. There is no going back to a world where in-person work is the only model executives should entertain. Rather than struggle to get an unwilling workforce back to the office, businesses should be looking for ways to adapt and see if remote first can work for them over the long term. And this is from Mike Giannone, and he is the president, CEO, and vice chairman of Blackbaud. Well, I have to say, I have another take altogether, speaking from my own personal experience. So I think perhaps that one of the most underlying, unaddressed reasons people are so vehemently opposed to RTO and much prefer to work from home is the single most distracting, sickening complaint I have had to endure for much of my professional life. It is the complete disregard for common courtesy, consideration, and a stunning lack of hygiene showed by coworkers towards each other in the usage of common areas, from break rooms to phone rooms to conference rooms to the mother of them all, restrooms. I have had to cut off people who were so agitated that they dispensed with their usual pleasant professional personality attributes to go into violence in copious detail about the states of the restrooms, both male and female, with the female restroom complaints far outweighing the male restroom complaints. And speaking for myself and what I personally witnessed in the male restrooms, which were disgusting in their own right, the female restrooms have been described more often than I would like to remember as war zones. People are disgusted, have repeatedly expressed collective desires to shame other staffers, especially the women. I had to actually really talk them off the ledge from doing so. But they became so upset at their colleagues that they wanted me to intervene because, of course, so many smart, focused, well-groomed women have to find ways to fend for themselves and clean up the areas they need to utilize just to freshen up. And it embitters them. I don't blame them at all. I have witnessed guys in the next stalls from me being, let's say, musical while on conference calls, and I just always shook my head. Conference rooms look like Occupy Wall Street just evacuated the premises far too often. And don't forget printers and multi-unit machines and the stupid things people do to destroy otherwise easy to use and maintain office machinery. And they would vent on me about interns smashing their printer units to pieces or opening reams of paper just enough to print their jobs and not put the entire ream into the almost empty tray while leaving the paper wrapper next to the printer because they thought they were helping. However, that impression became stuck into their consciousness or mini zeitgeist. Don't even get me started on what people leave in office refrigerators and walk away, never to return to the scene of this lab experiment gone wrong. The major problem with the failure of all the superhero movie franchises is the same as the comic books. They become more and more pointlessly arcane, convoluted, and nonsensically complicated than virtually all of the readers' viewers' lives. The same geeks who nod and repeat the Spider-Man mantra of, with great power comes great responsibility, can't summon up the intestinal fortitude to flush the toilet in the restroom or even wash their hands, let alone clean up after themselves in break rooms, meetings, and learn how to make pleasant small talk in elevators or hallways. Don't even get me started on people who get into elevators and continue their participation in a group meeting on the phone while everyone else has to stand there listening to them on a call loudly. It's incredible. That's why people want to work from home. They can sit around in their loungewear in their filthy places and blur out the background so everyone else on Zoom can't see the piles of takeout containers and empty junk food packages stacked up behind them and around them. Again, these are people who seem to believe that hand soap in common areas such as restrooms is some form of kryptonite. I spent literally years trying to give away Purell to coworkers as I sourced it by the cases. The people that did use the Purell were obviously sanitary, practiced hygiene, and were highly conscious of their colleagues' unhygienic conduct. So they readily accepted full bottles, and if I offered any more, they would stockpile it. So don't give me any jib about owning up to great responsibility. You can't keep control of your own human waste and your own digits. And if you have ever had to enter a room full of developers having a pizza lunch and witness the weirdo stuff they project on the screens in the front of the room and laugh hysterically at the asocial, completely unfunny, unentertaining, uninformative, freaky videos they all howl at, you would quickly walk backwards and then head out of that room, doing your best to avoid making eye contact with them for the rest of your life because you can't look at them in the eye anymore and see a responsible adult. What is wrong with you people? Again, also, people don't like to wear shoes all day. Thanks for listening. See you next time. And as the kiddies say, peace out.